Hi. We are going to discuss about cost estimate, which is of forecast nature in projects, and a budget, which is the nature of a target and their relationship. So today we are going to discuss cost estimate and budget and their relationship. Also, what we are going to discuss is that we are going to emphasize cost estimate contingencies and budget contingencies. And we are going to emphasize the fact that cost estimate contingency and budget contingency are totally different concepts. For example, cost estimate contingency is expressing the estimated or forecasted sum that would be needed to cover costs of risks and uncertainties. But the budget contingency is a project management allowance tool that he uses actively for managing the project. We are talking also quite a lot about risk and uncertainty that relates to cost estimating, budgeting, and contingencies. In this picture, I have taken excerpts from 3 different sources about estimate accuracy. And these excerpts are presented in this picture by these 3 sources as 3 separate sets of bullets. Look at the first set of bullets. It says that there are different estimate types, cost estimate types, and then it also shows a non-symmetrical skewed accuracy of those types, which is rather interesting, of course, that there is bigger chance of exceeding the estimate than coming lower than the estimate. Look at the second set of bullets. So it tells us that the accuracy, cost estimate accuracy, it improves by project phase. And then if we look at the third set or third bullet, we can get there a message that there are several items in a project for which we can express estimates, and the accuracy may vary by item or by level of what is concerned in a project. So we are not talking only the estimate of the cost of the whole project, but it can be some component part of the project. Probability distribution is a rather realistic way of expressing the cost estimate by including business risks. That is, business risks mean the risks that cannot be insured, at least not with reasonable premium to be paid to insurance companies. So we must carry those risks. They are kind of a managerial risks that we must carry ourselves. So the probability distribution shows basically all possible values that can be anticipated and their probabilities. Let's assume that we have here a very simple project where we have estimated minimum, most probable, and maximum values for this cost estimate. And the minimum is 150 euros, the maximum is 600, and the most probable is 250. Let's also assume that the cost variation in this estimate comes from material prices, man hours spent, and estimate uncertainty of these. Well, these minimum, most probable, and maximum values can be used as parameters of a skewed probability distribution, as shown in this picture. Well, now we have added to the picture the expected value or expected cost based on this probability distribution. Let's assume that we can calculate the expected value accurately, and then we have a standard deviation which is 75 euros around the expected value 292. Now, cost estimate contingency is for cost that will realize on the top of a basic estimate. And cost estimate contingency, it comes from two sources. First, risks. Risks may be due to changes in plans, weather conditions that would make the manufacturing more difficult or costly, resourcing problems and delays in material supplies, for example. And then, in addition to risks, the other source for cost estimate contingency is the estimate uncertainty. And this estimate uncertainty can be due to deficient information that was used in estimating, and uncertainty due to use of inaccurate estimating methods, for example. Okay, risk and uncertainty. So now, if we need to express the basic estimate of this project as a deterministic number, and also the contingency on the top of it as a deterministic number, then what would our estimate be then expressed about? So what would be those numbers of expressing this estimate? So would it be 292, which is the expected value, plus something, for example, 30? Or 250, which is the most probable value, which is the highest peak of the probability distribution, plus 42, which makes a sum of 292, which is the expected value, which means that there is 50-50 chance of coming under or coming over it. Or would it be very optimistic, for example, 250 plus something, like 20? Or very pessimistic, like 292 plus, let's say, the standard deviation 75 on the top of it, to be on the safe side? Then we would be somewhere like 80% probability of not exceeding that value. Or being overly pessimistic, so would it be, for example, 270 plus 150, or overly optimistic, for example, 200 plus 30? So now the question, by looking at this picture, is that which is better, underestimating or overestimating? And the answer is that none of them, because the estimate should be realistic, and we should not confuse estimating, which is kind of a decision analysis, with decision making, which is setting the budget. So now we are talking about estimates, and estimates should be very realistic. But this is a difficult task, definitely, if the probability distribution shows a very realistic view on the cost. So how would we express it and the contingency in deterministic numbers? Well, I want to say a few words about subjective estimates and potential biases that we have in our estimates. So would, for example, even our minimum, most probable, maximum values of the probability distribution be right? So projects are unique, and therefore, as they are unique, we must use the best knowledge of the project personnel and the experts who know the project, and derive a subjective estimate based on their expertise of what the cost would be. So the cost estimates are derived from subjective opinions or estimates of these people with expertise. However, human beings are not very good estimators, and the estimates are subject to many biases that relate to flaws in mental processes and heuristics that these experts might use in estimating. So, for example, one source of bias is overconfidence. People are really overconfident typically on their estimates. There might be optimism, groupthink, and for example, anchoring is one phenomenon that is very well known, that if we express certain value, for example, the most probable value of 250, people tend to anchor on that value, and they cannot see anymore the possibilities of much higher or much lower costs. So kind of a mental processes of providing the expertise of what the expected cost could be. Well, to continue this discussion and regarding human estimators and biases, it's good to remember that people are inclined to concentrate on estimating rather tangible items when estimating risks and cost effects, like variation in unit prices shown at the top of this picture. But the challenging issue in a project is that many costs incur from rather intangible items that come from human and social factors and actions between various parties that have different ways of thinking and doing things, different mental models, and even different objectives. And these issues cause significant risks and cost variation accordingly, as shown in this picture. So it's really important to understand the uniqueness of projects and where the cost variation and risks come from. And that is not normally the technical, tactical content of the project connected to unit prices and quantities, as many times us engineers like to think. Well, having said this, I want to emphasize the following important aspects in cost estimating. Detailed cost composition doesn't necessarily result to better accuracy. So both top-down and bottom-up approaches are needed. Different methods and consideration of the project's component parts at different levels should be used for obtaining accuracy. And we can also affect costs actively and not just estimate them by affecting the design of the project's end product. For example, using the design to cost principle for enhancing the idea among the designers and project personnel that there is a target cost, and therefore there is also a target quality, and we would like to avoid over quality and try to reduce our costs already when designing the project. This picture, or actually 4 small pictures, tell the story about the estimating accuracy and how it develops during the project. The first picture describes the beginning of the project, and the 4th picture, the last one, describes the completion, the time at the completion of the project. And in the first picture, we can position the project cost and time not that accurately, but we can depict a rather large elliptical area where we understand that this project is going to end up to with its cost and time. In picture number 2, when the costs have already accumulated and the project is going on, we can draw a smaller elliptical area. We can be more accurate on where we are going to hit with the cost and time. And in the third picture, even further when the project has been executed, so we can draw even a smaller area where we are going to end up to. And in the last picture, when the project is completed, picture number 4, we can see that the costs have accumulated to a level which is within the large area that we originally estimated in the beginning of the project, and also the time has been exceeded a little bit slightly, but that is also within the actual originally estimated area. Now, we are going to talk about the difference about cost estimate contingencies and budget contingencies, and also how cost estimates are used to determine budgets. This picture shows on the left that there is cost estimate and contingencies. So we have total cost estimate, total contingency. On the right, we have the budget, which is a target. And there is the total budget and budget contingency of a project manager that is determined based on the cost estimate. When deciding what the budget is and what the budget contingency is, the assumption is that all risks do not take place at the same time, of course. So we shouldn't necessarily calculate all the contingencies, estimate contingencies together. And also, when setting the budget, it might be wise to set the budget so that it is a little bit tight and challenging, but still realistically achievable. That is typically what people even like. Then on the top of the budget and budget contingency, there is the contingency of company management. So company management can use a kind of a conservative estimate of the project for their profitability calculations and so on. So that is left for the company management. And on the very right of the picture, we also have the revenue budget from the project delivery when we are delivering that to the customer. So we are not only budgeting cost, but we are also budgeting revenues. We talked about cost estimate contingency, and it is for expressing the estimated forecasted sum that would be needed to cover cost of risks and uncertainties. But the budget contingency is wholly different. It is a project manager's cost allowance tool that he can use actively for managing the efficiency of the project work. The project manager does not define his contingency sum to his sub-project managers, as he cannot know in advance in which sub-projects the risks are going to realize. However, when and if risks realize in certain sub-project, the project manager can move the part of his contingency to sub-project manager's budget. And in this way, kind of increase the sub-project manager's budget. However, the project manager doesn't need to do that kind of a moving to the sub-project. In any ways, the sub-project can show a cost overrun, but at the project level, the project manager's cost contingency covers that. And especially if the sub-project manager has made a little bit bad management and so on, so it might be even relevant to show the cost overrun. But also, otherwise, there just might be good explanations why the overrun has happened, and we don't need to start fiddling with moving contingencies here and there and try to kind of cover up the cost overruns. It might even be a better reporting practice to show the cost overruns and also costs that are lower than the budgeted cost compared to the original budget in the end of the project, and then just explain. And the explanations can be very legitimate and justified, and it doesn't mean that anyone is to blame if there is a deviation to the budget, but just good explanations can be provided thereof. That's all. Thank you very much for participating to this session. See you later.